And for our third and final story, gang, we're going to give a rest to talk about riots, insurrectionists, and the obliteration of history and domination. And we're going to talk about the transgender movement because you know what? Hey, it's still June, the beginning of June. It's still Pride Month, quote unquote. So you know what? I think that it is completely appropriate to do this. And specifically, we are talking about J.K. Rowling. And she has gotten herself into hot water again over the transgender movement. Now, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, she is very, very progressive. Economically, politically, socially, I mean, you name it. Very uber progressive. Loyal member of the Labour Party, which is roughly equivalent to the Democrat Party. Again, do not think that Labour Party equals just the UK version of the Democrat Party because there are a lot of differences. But roughly speaking, that's the comparison that you can make. So, J.K. Rowling, very progressive in all these areas, Labour Party member, etc., etc. But in one area, she is commonsensical, and that is the area of transgenderism. She actually got in trouble for the first time last December. You might remember it when a woman in the UK was actually fired for refusing to refer to a transgender man, I believe, as a man, because she said, no, I mean, he's a woman. She referred to this transgender individual by this person's biological sex instead of the quote-unquote preferred sex. And J.K. Rowling defended her when she was fired, saying, no, we're taking this a little too far now, guys. Okay, firing someone just for having, a difference of opinion that is rooted in science, that doesn't seem to be the path that we want to go down. Well, she did it again. Because she had a tweet 6 days ago where she retweeted a tweet. It was from some charity which was talking about how we can make a post-COVID-19 world more equal for people who menstruate. Okay, think about that. People who menstruate. This is what J.K. Rowling tweeted. People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Woombend? Wimpund? Woomwoond? Okay, so of course she was making fun of it, and the mob descended upon her, as was completely predictable, and as I'm sure J.K. Rowling herself knew would happen. All of a sudden, you had people calling her a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, whom we are now told are not really feminists at all because they don't accept trans women because they see them naturally and realistically as men. We've had opinion pieces, supposedly thoughtful opinion pieces, by people asking how, as a Harry Potter fan, am I going to be able to enjoy Harry Potter now when I know that J.K. Rowling is a transphobe? It's really not that hard, okay? I mean, just tear off the covers, forget that, she wrote the books, and just keep the books and read them. It's really not that hard. We've had other supposed deep pieces about, I'm a transgender fan of Harry Potter, and this is what I want J.K. Rowling to know. And of course, all the big people associated with the Harry Potter film franchise have been trotted out, and they have dutifully thrown her underneath the bus. So Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Bonnie Wright, who portrayed Ginny Weasley, I forget the actress's name, but the one who portrayed Luna Lovegood, and Eddie Radmar, who is the star of the Harry Potter spin-off series, Fantastic Beasts and How to Find Them. They have all come out, they have all trotted out, they have all kissed the ring, and they have all parroted the mantra that trans women are women, trans men are men. And on that note, that's really getting to the core issue here, because like I said, the mantra of everyone who is reacting to J.K. Rowling's tweets are saying she's a transphobe because trans women are women. There was a piece a few days ago in the UK Independent of all places, serious newspaper supposedly, this is the headline: How Britain's Colonial Past Can Be Traced Through to the Transphobic Feminism of Today. It was written by a self-identified Muslim drag queen named Amru al-Qadi. And al-Qadi, his basic argument is that, well, in light of J.K. Rowling's transphobic tweets, it's really a good time to remind ourselves that the UK is transphobic and the entire world is transphobic because of white supremacy. No joke, this is his argument. England of the Enlightenment started expanding throughout the world, and when they expanded into Africa and India and China and North America, etc., they brought with them their quote-unquote European white objective science, which said that sex was composed of two steel boxes. You were either a man or you were a woman, and there was nothing else, which al-Qadi says just totally destroyed native cultures. This is what he says. Quote, the British Age of Enlightenment prized itself on scientific rationality, including its strict taxonomies of racial and sex categorization, which, as he said, completely destroyed native cultures. He mentions, for example, the Hijra people in India, part of Hindu. They're intersex people. They're men who dress as women, who were held in high esteem in India before. Still, actually, now, though most of them are sex workers. Right before the British came in, or the two-spirit traditions among the Native American tribes before the British came in. And because the English were so white supremacist and thought that they knew better than anyone else, because their science said that biologically there is only men and women, they destroyed these native cultures, which said, oh, no, man, sex is a spectrum, don't you know? So, okay, put that under your hat. Now, my favorite reaction, though, to this has to be from George Takei, aka Mr. Sulu, who said on Twitter that if you believe in quote-unquote, he actually put it in quotes, quote-unquote biological sex, then you are scientifically ignorant. Literally, if you believe in something that is so obvious that a blind man can see it, then you are scientifically ignorant. Now, this all goes back actually to a piece that was written by Nature magazine in 2018, October 30th of 2018. The headline of which read, quote, U.S. proposal for defining gender has no basis in science. A move to classify people on the basis of anatomy or genetics should be abandoned. This is a scientific journal saying that categorizing people as men or women based on their anatomy, based on their genitals, based on their genetics, like chromosomes and things like that, should be completely abandoned because it's unscientific. Now, how is it unscientific? Because of this, quote, biology is not as straightforward as the proposal suggests. By some estimates, as many as 1 in 100 people have differences or disorders of sex development, such as hormonal conditions, genetic changes, or anatomical ambiguities, some of which mean that their genitalia cannot clearly be classified as male or female. Okay, so we have this quote-unquote scientific argument from Nature magazine, and then we have the historical argument from Amru al-Qadi, who basically said that, well, since the Hijra people were transgender and the Hindus respected them, and because Native American tribes had two-spirit traditions among them, then of course that's valid. Of course that's valid. Let's break this down, okay? Let's take the quote-unquote scientific one first. 1 in 100 people, that amounts to 1% of the global population, okay? So they try to say 1 in 100 people. Oh, wow, there's a lot of them. That's pretty significant. And as many as 1 in 100 people. So it could be even less than that, okay? But it's no more than 1% of the global population has these differences or disorders of sex development. Now pause and really think there. Differences or disorders? First of all, if it's differences or disorders, why exactly does that prove that biological sex isn't real? Because if it's different or a disorder, that means that it's breaking a rule of some kind, right? You can only have a disorder, you can only have a difference if there is actually a rule to contrast it with, right? Well, what's the rule? What's the rule here? If we are talking about differences or disorders in biological sex, what is the only rule that we can actually compare these things so that we know that they're differences or disorders? Well, it's biological sex. The only reason why we can tell that these people, this 1% of the population globally, have these differences or disorders is because we have the standard of male and female. We have the standard of biological sex. If biological sex didn't exist, we wouldn't even be able to tell that these were differences or disorders in the first place. And no, simply because these are differences or disorders, that doesn't mean that there can't be anything as biological sex, because things that break the rule only prove the rule. Exceptions prove the rule. They don't break the rule, because, again, if they didn't, then there would be no rule to break, and they wouldn't be recognized as exceptions. So George Takei can take his tweet and smoke it for all I care, because he has just proven his ideological commitment to his cause trumps actual science. Okay? George Takei is not a scientist. He played a crew member in Star Trek. That's all he has. That's not all that he's done, but that's all that he's remembered for. So when he tries to say that you are scientifically ignorant because you believe in biological sex, laugh at him. Laugh at him and say, no. It's not that I'm scientifically ignorant. It's just that you are so ideologically blind to this that you refuse to see what's right underneath your nose, Mr. Sulu, Mr. Takei. So there's that. The historical argument, quote unquote, that Amru al-Qadi gives is just as bad. Because think about it like this, gang. So yes, there were examples. He is right. The Hijra in Hindu society and two-gender traditions in Native American tribes, those are real. Absolutely. But that does not tell us that it is true. Simply because something happened in history does not mean that it's true. History is like any of the sciences. Like physics. It can tell us the laws of motion and the laws of thermodynamics. It doesn't really say a lot about morality or about what things are and therefore how things should act or how they should be treated based on what they are philosophically. The same is true for history, because all of a sudden, if that is now the standard, not only should marriage have never been redefined, because 98% of the world population throughout time in history until 5 seconds ago, again, in the context of human history, said that marriage was between a man and a woman, okay? But not only that, not only does that fail its own smell test and actually disprove what they wanted and were arguing for just 5 years ago, but also, if your argument is that, well, this is true and this is valid because it was present in this culture, and this culture, think about all the other things that have been in different cultures. The Aztecs sacrificed not just people, but children. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, they abandoned children who were too sick or who were deformed. Okay? Or, let's talk about this, slavery. Slavery is not the exception to the norm. Slavery has actually been the norm throughout human history, with one group claiming domination over all the others. And therefore using that as justification for going in and saying, hey, we conquered you, now you're our slaves. If we're really going to go down this path, then why are we saying that statues of Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson have to be removed because they fought for slavery? I mean, it's right there in history. all throughout human history, in fact. So it must be okay because, Amr al-Qadi says because these transgender people were in these different cultures, that must mean that it's perfectly all right. Because that's the implication that he's giving. Do we really want to go down that path? Do we really want to go down that path? Because then, of course, you can find examples for anything that you want in history. So then it does not become a matter of what is actually true and good. It becomes a matter of, okay, how can I get enough people to force what I want onto everyone else? How can I do that? So really, both of those arguments fall apart at the seams. But this does something else too, okay? Go back to George Takei's tweet. If you believe in biological sex, quote unquote, then you are scientifically ignorant. What George Takei is basically saying is that the only thing that we have are stereotypes. The only thing that we have are stereotypes. If there is no such thing as man or woman, as actual concrete realities, then the only thing that we have are stereotypes, behaviorisms, mannerisms, and stylistic choices that differentiate men from women. Now, just a few years ago, we were told that stereotypes were bad, stereotypes were evil. We had to get rid of stereotypes. And now we're being told that the only thing that we have is stereotypes. Well, you know what? I have a great idea then for ending systematic racism. I think that if stereotypes and following stereotypes are all that you need to become something, then I think that if every Caucasian person in the United States just put on blackface, appropriated black culture, brown culture, Hispanic culture, Puerto Rican culture, Mexican culture, Colombian culture, Peruvian culture, Nicaraguan culture, and all the other cultures in between. If we just appropriated them all and we became black and Puerto Rican and Peruvian and Brazilian and Mexican and Nicaraguan, then obviously we wouldn't be white anymore, and we would be those things because we were following the stereotypes. And then, of course, because we were no longer white, we couldn't have white privilege, we couldn't have white supremacy, and everything would be hunky-dory, and we could finally live in peace, happiness, and have a utopia. That is my idea for world peace. This week's idea for world peace right there. And on that note, gang, I am signing off because I might need an adult beverage after working on this episode. So take care, everyone. Talk to you soon. Ciao.